So Undertow is a move monkey move where in the action of turning over a card, another card is loaded onto said card. Originally someone asked me if I could teach Undertow, and I didn't really have the intention of asking for permission to teach this move because it's sort of like those, should I really put this out there for free, and it's like all of that. But then I did some thinking, and then I realized, well, who really uses Undertow in real life, or just like in general, right? It's definitely just a move for magicians to flex on like other magicians, and even then most people will instantly recognize that it's Undertow, right? You go into this position, they're like, oh yeah, that's the motions for Undertow, even if they can't do it for themselves, right? So it's just a matter of whether or not you can really do it, right? So after some consideration, I decided to ask the Buck twins for permission to teach this move. And then, yeah, this was before they decided to make all of their material public domain. So yeah, it just took me that long to film and just note everything down, okay? So yeah, but anyways, they gave me permission to teach this move, and yeah, so I just want to give them a huge thank you for letting me teach this move, even before they made their whole public domain thing. But yeah, anyways, with the palming live stream lectures like currently ongoing, I thought it would be a good idea to just like release the Undertow tutorial right pretty much now, and then yeah, so then you have something to practice along with your palming techniques. So Undertow was first published in a very famous or infamous book called If an Octopus Could Palm by Dave Buck back in 2011. So the book is famous, and I say like famous or infamous because it contains a whole bunch of, well, very knacky palming related sleight of hand techniques. But the truth of the matter is, everything in this book is not necessarily meant to be done. Yeah, period. It's not necessarily meant to be done. The whole book is more or less just a meditations on sleight of hand and tinkering on what's possible with palming. So it's not really meant to be easy or practical. It exists because it can exist. And that's what's important. It exists because it shows what's possible with sleight of hand and what's possible really when you can sort of tinker around with things, even though it's not practical or it's easy. So that's the backstory behind If an Octopus Could Palm. It's just there. It exists because it can, right? So anyways, a second edition of the book was then released in 2021. And then, funnily enough, Undertow was also published in the same year, so 2021, in a magic magazine called Elixir by Dave Buck. So yeah, it's published 3 times. It's twice in the same book with 2 different printings, and then once in a magic magazine. So yeah, it's a pretty recent move. Now, since you'll be palming a whole lot while practicing this move, and palming bends the heck out of cards, there's a couple of decks that I recommend that you use. One is that you use a deck that you just don't care about, because if you start practicing this move while you're using like an expensive deck or one of your favorite decks, chances are you'll end up with a deck that's bent beyond recognition and that you don't want to use ever again, okay? So use a deck that you don't care about. 2, use a poop deck. So a poop deck is a deck that's past the broken in stage. It's a deck with like brown edges and they're sort of clumpy and they're very, very soft. So you can use those because they've been like used past their lifespan basically, okay? And then 3rd is a deck with a soft stock. So basically just any deck that's very soft and good for palming, that's probably good for Undertow as well. So most of the decks will do, and those are the 3 decks that I recommend that you use for Undertow. So for Undertow, you'll need 2 cards. One starts in a classic palm, which if you don't know how to do a classic palm, this is way above of your league, but I left some info cards over here where you can learn like the basic palming structure, and then yeah, just some basic palming techniques, okay? And the other card is in your other hand, held by the corners, like so, okay? So it really doesn't matter whether you do this with a left hand or a right hand classic palm. As a matter of fact, I actually recommend you to learn this move with both hands, because you never know when ambidexterity with certain moves comes handy. Okay, so yeah, you can definitely learn this with both hands. So the card should be facing the same direction. So if you have like a face down palm card, then this card in your other hand should also be face down. Or if it's face up, then this card should also be face up. But generally, most people do Undertow while it's face down, like so. Your palming hand approaches the displayed card, so I'll be calling this the displayed card, from the top corner over here. And as it approaches this card, you're going to flex your fingers. You're going to flex your right hand fingers, and this causes this little gap over here. So now you'll notice there's a gap between of my fingers and the palm card over here, right? So it's just a very simple flexing action, which causes this gap. So now that you have this gap, this card is going to be inserted in this gap, like so, okay? And there's not really a definitive answer as to where this card really lands, but I'll tell you more about this in the tip section, but generally the short edge of this card should land around the middle finger over here, and then the long edge of this card should land around where the palm connects to the fingers over here. Okay, so it should generally be around here. Okay, and you don't want this card to be past this point, because if it's past this point, you've inserted this card too deeply into your palm and you won't be able to actually do most of the move. So you really want it to be before where the palm starts. Okay, so you generally want it to be in this area. Okay, so with the card in position, okay, so you have your card palmed and you have this card inserted in position. With this card in position, you're going to curl in your thumb so that the pad of the thumb contacts the face of this card over here. Okay, there's not really like a definitive spot to where your thumb contacts, just wherever it lands. Okay, that's where it is. Okay, so with your thumb here, you're now going to move your thumb upwards, and just from pure friction, it's going to bring this card along for the ride, and it's going to move it upwards as well. So this brings this card closer to the displayed card. At the same time, the displayed card is going to move towards this palm card, and to do so, your right index, middle, ring, and pinky finger are going to curl in backwards. So they're just going to simply curl in. The book tells you to form a fist, but I don't really do that. I just sort of let them like curl in. But if it helps you visualize, then you can form a fist, okay? So by curling in these fingers, this moves this card backwards. And by moving this card backwards, these two cards will sort of just meet at the center point, okay? So they're just going to slide together like so, okay? And then, yeah, that's basically it. You just hope for the best and hope that they coalesce together properly. Okay, so the ending position should be the thumb is on the face of the cards like so, and the bottom corner of the card, so this general area, is contacting your palm. So it's contacting the palm over here, and then the third phalange of your index finger. So it's generally around like here, right? So that's where the long edge of the card should sort of end up. Okay, your index is underneath of the card, just sort of curled in like so. The middle finger is contacting the bottom short edge of the card over here. So right now there's sort of a bracket sort of catching this card, right? The third phalange of the index finger and the palm is catching the long edge over here, and the bottom of the middle finger is catching this short edge over here. And then the rest of your fingers are just gently curved and curled in along with your middle finger. So that's your ending position. And that's the move, right? Theoretically, it's not that difficult. You have a palm card, you insert it on top of a random card. You slide your thumb forward to slide this palm card forward. You curl in your other fingers to slide the display card backwards, and then they meet at the center where they can then coalesce. And yeah, that's the move. But obviously, it's a lot harder than you expect it to be, right? There's really, mechanically, like I can't really describe it more to you because that's what happens, but I can give you a couple of tips that will make this move easier, which is what I'll get into right now. So Undertow is largely a prediction game, and I say that because you're basically going to predict where the palm card is going to land when you curl in these fingers, right? So now that you can see that it sort of moves in over here, right? So you're going to basically predict where this card is going to land, and you're going to insert this card exactly where you predicted it's going to land. If that sort of makes sense, right? So if I predict my card is going to end up in this position, then I should insert the card where it'll slide into that position, if that sort of makes sense, right? So as you do Undertow, you'll eventually develop a sweet spot where you can hit the move pretty much 99% of the time, assuming that the cards aren't like bent out of shape. So for me, this sweet spot is, well, the display card is placed diagonally, so it's not directly straight up, right? Some people make the mistake of having it like straight up into your hand, but I actually place it sort of diagonal into my hand, so then sort of follows the curvature of these two fingers, right? You can sort of see that they're not like straight, they curve in like so, right? So I insert this card diagonal into my hand, and now the bottom corner of this card lands directly on the center of the pad of my middle finger over here. So you have the center of my middle finger. This corner lands directly on top of it, like so. And yeah, that's basically it. And this long edge lands pretty much directly on top of where my index finger meets my palm. So over here. Okay, so this is generally the two anchor points for my sweet spot over here. Okay, so your hand is different from mine, so you'll need to test these two other factors to find your sweet spot. One is the angle of the card, because maybe the curvature of your hand is sort of different from mine, so the squaring action at the end will also be different. And then two is how much the card is inserted. So I insert it pretty fairly deeply into my hand, but you could insert it a bit less or maybe slightly a bit more, but again, it shouldn't be in your palm. So generally, you should play around with these different play around with these different factors, okay? So if you find your sweet spot, the move will basically be guaranteed from the setup. So if I have my sweet spot over here, right, and I insert the card like so, the moment I do my move, it's pretty much going to be guaranteed to hit, right? There may be some little shifts here and there, but you can adjust that with your thumb, okay? So what your thumb is going to do is, if you notice that it's offset, your thumb is going to rely on this little cage. Remember when I said there was a cage formed by the palm of your hand and the index and the middle finger at the bottom? Your thumb is going to rely on this cage, and it's going to basically just drag this card until it hits this cage over here. And by hitting this cage, you'll know that this card becomes aligned with the other card as well, because this card is also trapped by this cage. So if you do Undertow and you notice that it's slightly off, you can just use your thumb to just slide it until it is aligned, like so. Okay, so that's something else that you can do, and so that's why the end grip is so important. Okay, so you really want to end up in this end grip, like so. Okay. The third tip that I can give you is that you have to apply a bit more pressure on the cards once you complete the move with your thumb. So here you'll notice that this card is sort of pretty bent, right? And that's because, well, because after palming a card, the replaced card will be bent, right? So after palming a card, you'll notice that there's this very disgusting curvature. So after I do Undertow, you'll pretty much see this separation in between of the two cards. And it's not even my fault, right? It's just because you bend cards and paper bends. So if you don't want your audience members to see this gap, you're going to need to press down on these two cards with your thumb. So now you're going to clip it in between your middle finger, your thumb, and your index finger. And these causes this card to actually just bend and just stay as one, like so, okay? It doesn't look that nice, but I would rather bend the heck out of this card than have like this gap over here, okay? So that's that. And the last tip is you can actually do Undertow with both hands. So if you're practicing, you're having trouble with the final squaring action with just one hand, you can do Undertow with two hands. So if you do Undertow like so, your other hand can reach over, just grip the corner like so, and just give it a little bend like so, right? So this will also help with the card separation problem, but mainly it's there to help with the alignment issue, okay? So you'll notice that grabbing the other card with your hand seems kind of weird, right? Because this is generally supposed to be a turning action, so why would your other hand come over and grab it too? I'll get more into the context of Undertow in general and when you actually do a two-handed Undertow in this next section. So if you're wondering why I'm putting context before applications and all the other stuff, it's because context is tied to the timing of this move. So if you don't understand the context behind the move, don't expect to do the move well. And I'm not being like harsh on purpose. It's true because you're going to flash this move 100% if you don't understand the context behind this move, okay? So the general context of Undertow is you have a card face down, your other hand comes over and just turns it face up to display it. That's the general context of Undertow. And it's during this turning action to display this card that you execute Undertow. You should not execute Undertow before, because if you execute Undertow before, this corner will flash. If you execute Undertow after this card begins to show itself, you are going to flash the squaring action. So you want the entire Undertow action to be done as you are turning it over, like so, okay? So that's the general timing and context behind Undertow. So if you do Undertow with two hands, the context becomes slightly different. It's just going to add on to the original turning action, okay? So the original turning action is this, and so it's just going to add a bit onto that. So you're going to execute Undertow, and you have the same context of turning over this card, but as you turn over this card, your right hand is just going to come, or your other hand, sorry, is just going to come over and give it a little bend, sort of as like a little display of this one card, like so, which you can then put back into your other hand, like so. So it's sort of like a, in motion, should be sort of like this, right? So that's the general context behind a two-handed Undertow, right? It's just basically a pass around as well as a little squeeze to give the two-handed motion a bit more context, okay? Now, the reason why nobody does Undertow, besides the fact that it's difficult, is because the external reality of Undertow sucks, okay? I'm just gonna say it straight up. Sure, the external reality is you're turning over a card, but it's not as simple as that, because who puts a card that deeply into their other hand to turn it over, right? If I just did this, it would make sense, but instead I have to do this, which looks just really bizarre because, well, why do I need to stick it up over here to then do a turnover, right? You've seen me do two one-handed turnovers this simply, or just do this, right? So why would I need to stick it up my hand this much so then I could like turn over? It just makes no sense. So as an external reality, it just doesn't make sense at all. And also, you'll flash Undertow's mechanics, right? You'll flash it even if they don't see the card sliding in. And you'll flash it in the way where you will always see this thumb move forward. So even if I do Undertow with perfect timing, you will always see this thumb moving across the face of this card because I need it to accomplish the mechanics of Undertow. And you will also see the fingers curl in, right? So even if I do it from prime example, you will still see this thumb moving across and these fingers curling in. So why would your thumb and your fingers need to curl in to move to turn this card around, right? Because if I just do this with one card, this makes no sense. I would just do this, right? I wouldn't have to weirdly rub this card, right? So generally, the external reality of this move isn't good. So even if it was easier, it just doesn't look as good as a normal turning action because you have to do this. Okay, so the external reality of Undertow is just generally not that good, even if it has the context of turning over a card and then whatnot, because the turning action, it's not a natural or something that you would see. Now that you understand the context and why people don't really use Undertow all that much, then we can get into a couple of applications for you to just generally have fun. So a couple of applications is that you can use it as a non-visual color change. So you have the card displayed, so you have the 2 of spades. You execute Undertow under the guise of turning it over, and then changes to a 9 of clubs. So that's a non-visual color change that you can do. The other thing they can do is that you can use it as an add-on. So we have like a packet of maybe like 4 cards, for example. And you have this card palmed. You can execute Undertow to add this card onto this packet, like so. Okay, so now you have 5 cards in this packet. Okay, so that's just Undertow as an add-on. The other thing they can do is a card force. So what you can do is that, and what I did for a specific Instagram video or YouTube Shorts video is I did a dribble, and now they can say stop wherever they want. And as I place this packet aside, I execute a one-handed top palm, like so. It's because all their attention is focused right here on this card because that's their selection, okay? And since all their attention is here, I can execute a one-handed top palm with no issue. So I push this card forward, and now, under the guise of turning their selection around, I execute Undertow, and now, ah yeah, your card is the 6 of clubs, even though I just executed Undertow. So you basically force the top card over here. So if I want to force the ace of clubs, say stop, anywhere, and as I push this card forward and put this packet aside, I execute the one-handed top palm, and then execute Undertow, and then they'll land on the ace of clubs. Okay, so that's one choreography that you can do. I know other people have other choreography for Undertow forces, but this is mine. Okay. The other thing that you can do is that you can sort of do it as a card split. So if I have a 4, and then I also have all the other aces over here, and then where's the ace of spades? Where is it? Do I not have an ace of spades in this deck? Did I lose it? Oh no, it's over here. I'm just blind. Okay. So if I have 4 cards palmed, so you can do Undertow with multiple cards. So I have 4 cards palmed, and I have this other card over here. If I just insert this card into position and execute Undertow as per usual, these cards in my palm will fan out like so. So under the guise of turning this card over, it'll look like a card split. It'll look like it just multiplied like so. Okay, so this actually helps a lot with people who are struggling with the alignment of Undertow, because you don't need to align this card over here. It's hidden by this fan of cards, like so. So that's just an application they can do if you're struggling with Undertow. The only requirement is that you need to palm more than 1 card, okay? And then the last, not the last, but one thing that you can do is that you can do a card to box load. So we have a card palmed, and you have a box over here. You can insert the box. You can actually insert the box into this gap and then execute Undertow, like so, which you can then do a card to box, like so. Okay, so that's just something you don't have to necessarily execute Undertow with like one card. You can do it with multiple cards as well, right? So you can do this, which I don't know why we'd ever do that, but sure, right? So card to box load. And then the last thing is that you can do it as sort of cleaning up your dirty hand after palming, right? So if you did like a color change or something, right? If you did a color change and now you don't want to be left with this dirty card, you can just execute Undertow to display that you have one card, right? Simple. And those are all the applications for Undertow. And yeah, feel free to explore. That's why I don't really go in that much into detail for applications, because I want you guys to explore and tinker around, just like how the original Undertow was intended for you to do. Just tinker and explore. So if you're interested in Undertow and what else it can do, there's not really that many resources. You can get If an Octopus Could Palm by Dave Buck. There's also Savant by Dennis Kim, which is one of my favorite like color changes. You can also get the Elixir Magic Magazine, which you can't really access. You sort of have to email a person, and then they'll let you PayPal them, and then you can sort of get the magazine. It's a whole process, but Elixir Magazine is generally very, very good, so I highly recommend you get it. And those are pretty much all the resources for Undertow. There's not that much because, again, who really uses it? It's an impractical move. There's not really any good external reality, and so that's why no one really uses it. And that's Undertow. Once again, I'd like to give a huge thank you to the Buck Twins for allowing me to teach this move. But like I've said throughout this video, Undertow is definitely just a move meant to be done to other magicians, right? Especially because of its difficult mechanics and weird handling. I really don't recommend you to do it to lay people. I mean, regardless, right? Regardless of what you do with it, I hope they have fun practicing and performing it on social media or to other magicians. So yeah, I hope that you have fun just playing around with it and just, yeah, playing around with the different applications for the move especially. So I hope that you remember this move not for its difficult mechanics or for its weird handling, but for its constant reminder. For it is a constant reminder that you can constantly tinker around sleight of hand, because you never really know where that will take you. So that's how I want you to remember this move. I want it to be like, funny hard move that does a weird turning action. That's not what I want this end message of this video to be. I want the end message of this video to be, what else can I do with sleight of hand? If the action of turning over a card, I can replace a card and it's just like all that weird mechanics is possible, what else can I do? Can I do that with maybe a Tenkai palm, a Cloyus palm, a lateral palm maybe? Who knows, right? Who knows where this can actually take you? And that's the point of Undertow. It shouldn't be a practical or an impractical move, a hard or an easy move. It doesn't matter, right? All of that doesn't matter. What matters is that this serves as a reminder for you to tinker around with moves, to meditate and consider what else is possible with flawed methods. Because at the end of the day, that's what sleight of hand is. It's just trying to create perfection with imperfect methods. Because sleight of hand will never be perfect, because we have to compromise. We have to compromise this ideal image of what a clean magic effect is, and how imperfect our sleight of hand is, how shaky our hands are, or whatever, right? These imperfect conditions which can accomplish these perfect methods, let's just say, right? Or perfect effects. So there's really not much else I can really say about this move. It's just consideration of what can be possible with sleight of hand. But yeah, that's going to be it for me today. Yeah, with that message lingering in the back of your mind, I hope. Stay healthy, stay safe, and see you next time.